You know Graybar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Graybar does that.
Welcome into this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast, the official podcast of minor league baseball. Tyler Maughan, Benjamin Hill, Sam Dykstra. Guys, what is going on in New York City today? It's a high of 65 degrees here in Denver today on December, whatever this is, 11th. Have you guys had a winter of any sort arrive yet?
Are you sure you're not still in Orlando?
Yeah, like I don't know what.
What did you bring back to us? Back to your own home? Because last time we chatted, there was snow on the ground.
Yeah, and it was dumping snow last time, but not.
Yeah,
not
you were
anymore.
all being like, "We've turned the page to winter.
Like,
here
winter's
we are.
here.
It's
Not
65 degrees. What's
not anymore.
wrong?
Yeah, we're done with it. Apparently, it lasted 1 week. I was out of town for the weekend when it was when all that snow was on the ground, and now it's over. How are things in New York City?
They're good. It's cold. It's been really cold here. I was a little under the weather this week. So did I say they were good? No, they've been pretty grim.
Changing quickly.
Yeah. And then today I'm leaving work early to get part 2 of a deep gum cleaning. I had part 1 last week at the periodontist and on the right side. Now I'm going in for the left later this afternoon. So good we're knocking this recording out now because my mouth is going to be sore for in the immediate future or in the immediate present, or that is the future, the immediate whatever. Anyway, I'm going in. This is what the listeners want to know. I have a part 2 of my date with the periodontist.
That's Ben's mouth right now just looks like a before and after picture. You just see what happens.
One side and the other.
Sparkling right side.
Well, that's all we're going to talk about actually on this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. This is going to be a deep dive into the deep gum cleaning of Benjamin Hill. No, we're happy we got you with us on this week's episode of the Show Before the Show, the official podcast of minor league baseball. And we will kick things off with our Ben's Biz Banter, brought to you by Circle K, the official convenience store of minor league baseball. And we have business of minor league baseball news. The MLB winter meetings, the baseball winter meetings, are mostly in the rearview mirror. And we had what was formerly a minor league baseball event in the winter meetings come with a decent amount of minor league baseball news. We got a bunch of ownership changes for franchises across the baseball landscape, Ben.
Yeah, we do. Where to start? But there's 3 distinct pieces of news we won't go too in the weeds on all this, but I think it's good things for people to stay abreast on. Diamond Baseball Holdings, the private equity group that owns dozens and dozens of minor league teams, is actually now up to 4 dozen minor league teams with the recent acquisition of 3/4 of the Houston Astros system, the AAA Sugarland Space Cowboys, excuse me. Sky Cowboys. Yeah, I mean, it is the sky. They're in space. Anyway, True. DBH now has AAA Sugarland Space Cowboys, AA Corpus Christi Hooks, and High A or Single A Fayetteville Woodpeckers. All those teams were owned by the Astros, and now they are owned by DBH. We've talked about this in the past on this podcast, but with MLB having more direct control of minor league baseball, the incentive for MLB franchises to own their minor league affiliates greatly decreased. So we have seen, in the vast majority of cases, MLB teams that own their minor league affiliates selling those teams often to DBH. So the only Houston Astros affiliate not owned by DBH right now is the Asheville Tourists in High A, and they are owned by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and his family, and the team president down there, who is hands-on and on the ground, is the governor's son, Brian DeWine. But the other 3 teams in the Astros system are now part of DBH. Meanwhile, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins, and the AA Akron Rubber Ducks, an affiliate of the Cleveland Guardians. Both those teams have been owned by Fast Forward Sports, of whom Ken Babby was the head of that organization. He's owned both those teams for over a decade now, was the driving force behind the rebranding of both teams and the injection of a more irreverent feel into both those teams. Akron, of course, used to be the Arrows. Under Babby's leadership, they became the Rubber Ducks. Jacksonville used to be the Suns, and they became the Jumbo Shrimp. But Ken Babby, as we did talk about on this podcast, just last week, is now the CEO of the Tampa Bay Rays, and he's a big part of their new ownership group. And I think, seeking to perhaps raise capital for his involvement in Major League Baseball, he has sold the two minor league teams that he had been involved with, Jacksonville and Akron. He did not sell them to DBH. He sold them to the Prospector Baseball Group, who I just first became aware of a few months ago because they bought the Independent Partner League, Atlantic League, Lancaster Stormers. And now this group, which is headed by John Abamundi, I got to get these names straight, and Ben Boyer. They're two guys with a lot of history in business, tech, the world of finance. They have formed this Prospector Baseball Group, so they now own, in addition to the Independent Atlantic League, Partner League, Lancaster Stormers, and that they now own the two teams that Ken Babby used to own in Jacksonville and Akron. And I was looking at the Prospector Baseball Group's website, and they have a section that says, "Looking ahead, this is just the beginning. We're excited to bring the same care and support to more teams, strengthening communities, and delivering affordable family fun to our fans. As we add new teams to our portfolio, we'll remain focused on honoring local traditions while elevating the fan experience at each ballpark." So I think we might be hearing that name in the future, the Prospector Baseball Group, who now has three teams, two of them in the affiliated ranks. And then just today, Sam, as he often is, Sam just knows everything first. I mean, he was like, "Hey, Ben, did you see Visalia Montgomery?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't." But Sam saw it. But the Visalia Rawhide and the Montgomery Biscuits, the Rawhide being a single A Diamondbacks affiliate, Montgomery Biscuits being double A Rays, both of those, and not affiliated with one another in any way, but both of those teams have been sold to On Deck Partners, a new private equity group that is making its first foray into the world of the minor leagues. Visalia Rawhide had previously been owned by a guy named Sam Siegel, who I got to know through the years. Sam Siegel actually picked me up from the Trenton train station one day dressed in a hot dog suit for a day in which I would be covering the Trenton Thunder back in like 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. But then he went on by the end of the 2010s to be the owner of the Visalia Rawhide. And I wrote a story about him when he assumed control of that team in 2019, I believe it was, or maybe 2018. But I remember running into him at the baseball winter meetings. But he has sold the team to On Deck Partners, and the Montgomery Biscuits is the same ownership group that's also involved with the Richmond Flying Squirrels, headlined by Lou DiBella, who is best known in the boxing world. He's been involved in that world as a, I don't know what you'd call him, promoter, man of influence in boxing for a lot of years, but he has sold the Montgomery Biscuits while still retaining control of the Richmond Flying Squirrels. So let's do that one more time really quickly. 3 Astros affiliates are now part of the Diamond Baseball Holdings portfolio. That would be Sugarland, Corpus Christi, and Fayetteville. Jacksonville and Akron, formerly owned by Ken Babby's Fast Forward Group, are now with the Prospector Baseball Group. And Visalia and Montgomery, who had previously a different ownership, are now united with On Deck Partners. So all that's happened in the last week or so, movement on those 7 teams, which is quite a lot when there's 120 affiliated teams and 7 of them changed ownership just in this past week.
The thing I'll add to this is, especially on the Jacksonville and Akron side, those are some pretty high bars that Prospector Baseball Group has to now clear. I mean, both of those teams, incredibly creative, incredibly inventive, incredibly community oriented, I would say. We've talked about them a bunch on the show, and that's no accident, not because of who their ownership was, but because of the ideas that were coming out of them. And that's something I hope continues, in both spots. I want them to both be creative. I want them to be doing things that tells us a little bit about the community that they are in. How much have we learned about just the culture and culinary stylings of Northeast Ohio because of what the Akron Rubber Ducks have done in terms of alternate identities over the years? And Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, I feel like we have them on at least once a year to talk about something wacky that they've been doing. So that's a pretty high bar. A lot of that work is done by the front office. That doesn't come from ownership, but I hope ownership, this new Prospector Baseball Group, allows those front offices to continue to flourish. I like that they're tied together. It seems like they were a siblinghood, whatever you want to call that, working well in tandem, even though they are different leagues, different affiliates, different places in the country. I like that they are still together, so I'm sure that'll be something that works well. And then on the Montgomery side, as somebody who's been to that ballpark, and Ben, obviously you've been everywhere, but I wonder how much of this is just an opportunity to get part of that Riverwalk ballpark, that stadium that is in downtown Montgomery, right in the thick of things, and how much that could now become a venue for things beyond just baseball. And, obviously we're rooting first for the Biscuits on this show and in minor league baseball, want them to thrive. And I wonder, how much more could come to that ballpark and how much more could allow the Biscuits to grow from there, the identity to grow. We'll see how things go. But to have, like you said, 7 teams switch ownership in a week, that's a big one. I don't know how much of this is tied into the winter meetings and so many people being in Orlando and just wanting to announce it while everybody's together, or if there's something to that timing. But we'll hear more in the weeks and months to come. And if any more ownership changes happen in the offseason, we'll talk about it on a weekly basis.
All right, you guys. Well, moving to a question that we received regarding a giveaway and the confusion of the holiday timeline that the three of us had in regards to multiple different descriptors of this season. We heard from our friend Lynn Smith, Ben, and you have some light to shed on these subjects.
I mean, yeah, why were we talking about the 12 days of Christmas? It was a very specific thing.
Because Lake County had come out with its Advent calendar.
That's right.
Which was 12 days on their Advent calendar, which we should have said in the moment.
Conflates the two.
Yeah, we were going along with, it's for the 12 days of Christmas. As Lynn corrected us, normally an Advent calendar is like for the entire month of December leading up to Christmas. My sister actually posted a pretty funny meme today about, a lot of Advent calendars have chocolate in them, and how my niece has already gone through it all because she just knows the chocolate's in there. So there's only 4 days left until Christmas, according to my niece, because she's just eaten all the chocolate. So it was like, there's a combination of things going there. We didn't really correct it on the record. So Ben, what did Lynn say?
Yeah. And I got, a 4.5-year-old at home, and we have an Advent calendar, and it's a nightly exercise in discipline and restraint, and the benefit of being patient, because every day Harry wants more of that chocolate, but we're keeping him on task so far. Anyway, so if the Advent calendar is the period of time between December 1st and December 24th, Lynn explains that the 12 days of Christmas starts on Christmas Day and runs through January 5th, which is dubbed Twelfth Night, the night before Epiphany, the day the 3 wise men met the young Jesus. I feel like I once knew this. I feel like I should know this. But for those of you like us who needed a refresher, thank you, Lynn. The 12 days of Christmas start on December 25th. I think Lake County's Advent calendar was not following these specifications. I think it just had 12 days on it.
They called it the 12 Days of Captain's Cheer calendar. So it's not technically an Advent calendar. It's borrowing off of that calendar structure that we're also used to, but doing 12 days instead of 24 or 25. So maybe that's where our confusion came from, is that we just put Advent into there, but that's not technically what this is. It's the 12 days of Captain's Cheer. It does have
it does say Advent calendar,
but technically what they're selling is 12 days and not 24. So
yeah, we'll figure this all out eventually, but that's our best attempt at a clarification, and hope everyone is enjoying this holiday season and continues to enjoy it.
Hope you're enjoying whichever part of the month that you're most excited about.
Yeah, and the captains, who did spur this on, they made it clear they had a limited number of these calendars, $60, so pretty hefty, but it sold out, and it only featured 12 days. And I guess you could start it at any point you wanted, because these days were just labeled 1 through 12. But each one was like a box with a present in it. So 12 distinct minor league gifts in that box for $60. So
Pretty
enough
good.
people, yeah. And kudos to them on the creativity and for making us bone up on our on the religious calendars and trying to understand how all these holidays run.
Maybe we should do a baseball advent calendar that you just start opening in March, leading up to opening day. Here's an idea for all you front offices: just carry this in the spring instead.
Yeah, and then we'd have
Yeah.
the 12 days of baseball starting on opening day,
I like that.
which would then go to
Here's an idea: why don't we have the 162 days of basbaseball?
Yeah, let's just do a calendar for every day of baseball.
Yeah.
It's like one of those
on the
tearaway
157th day of baseball.
one of those tearaway daily calendars, but instead this one comes with gifts in it. I like that idea. Especially if it's chocolate. I'm like your niece. I'm a fan.
Yeah, so there's a good idea. Anyone wants to partner with us on a baseball advent calendar? Let's go.
The show before the show / your team here advent calendar. And we'd be thrilled to. We would help you present that, just like Ben's Biz Banter is presented every week by Circle K, the official convenience store of minor league baseball. Ben, good stuff as always. We'll catch you next Name That Dude in like 2 segments.
Yeah, I'll talk to you guys real soon. But before I go, I just thought of something, a good fun fact, which again, because Sam scoops me on everything now and I become superfluous in the presence of Sam. But Jeff Kent was elected to the Hall of Fame, and looking at his minor league career, he started his minor league career with the 1989 St. Catharines Blue Jays, a Canadian team in the New York Penn League. And Sam pointed this out, and Tyler, you could guess what noted individual was a teammate of Jeff Kent on the 1989 St. Catharines Blue Jays.
I'll give you a hint. This individual was in his age 17 season.
Age 17 season with the St. Catharines Blue Jays.
Went on to be a star, but not a Hall of Fame caliber star, but we might see him reevaluated down the line.
Is it Carlos Delgado?
It is.
Carlos Delgado, legend.
Yes.
And
So-
yeah, a guy who I'm very much like, yeah, let's talk a little bit more deeply about Carlos Delgado and his Hall of Fame candidacy, because I think there is certainly an argument to be made there. Man, that's a pretty stacked squad.
yeah. What was going on up there in 1989 in St. Catharines? That's the frustrating thing about minor league baseball. Is something that happened in 1989 feels like it might as well have been 1889 in terms of being able to track down like any information, especially from a defunct team. But anyway, my segment was over, but that crossed my mind. It was an interesting tidbit. I just have such a giving nature, wanted to share, even though Sam found it first. I mean, just assume everything I say is actually first Sam Dykstra.
I sign off personally on all of Ben's stories now.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Ben, we'll talk to you in a few.
Nice.
Rolling along with next week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast coming up next. Continuing along in this week's episode of the Show Before the Show, it is time to talk some more off-season stuff as it pertains to on-field in 2026. Sam, busy week this week. It was the winter meetings, which, of course, as we've talked about from year to year over the last several years, formerly a minor league baseball event, now essentially a major league baseball event, but still a lot as it pertains to minor leaguers, prospects, team shuffling, as we talked about last segment, all the rest. But man, it has been a very, very busy week.
It has been. And I think we go through this every year in terms of people thinking, oh man, this winter meetings isn't what it used to be. And then all of a sudden, 3 things happen at once. And you're just like, oh man, the hot stove is hot. Things are happening. It's just like, yeah, it's one of those events where there's not going to be a schedule. It's not going to be, hey, at noon, Kyle Schwarber is going to decide where he goes. Everybody gather in the media workroom. And then at 3, Pete Alonso is going to sign. And everybody gather in the media workroom. And it's not going to work that way. So, yes, there are going to be some years in which it's a little quieter. And then there are going to be some years in which Garrett Cole is going to sign. And you're going to be running out of your dinner room to try to figure out exactly how much money he got from the Yankees. And this was one of those years in which I saw some people talking about like, oh, this is kind of quiet. And it's like, because things are happening beyond the scenes. Like behind the scenes. They're happening in the hotel rooms upstairs. They're happening in meetings. They're happening around the bar in the hotel. Um, Groundwork is being laid, and sometimes it just takes one deal, right, for a bunch of others to pop off. I'm sure the Pete Alonso deal going to the Orioles, in case you haven't heard, was predicated on the fact that Kyle Schwarber re-signed with the Phillies. Like, okay, once one massive slugger is off the board, all these other teams are pivoting to the next guy. Alonso had a lot of offers to consider, ends up going to the Orioles to consider, for 5 years, $155 million. These things, yes, it's going to be different year in and year out, but there is activity happening every year. And Tyler, you got to witness it. I'm not saying you were in these rooms, right? Like, bring us the fresh rumors as Tarek Skubal being traded. But I mean, you were in Orlando this year. Ben has been to the winter meetings tons of times. I've been a few times. You've been before too. But just what was the vibe like, both as just a participant, somebody there who's there to rub elbows and meet people, but also just in terms of the baseball atmosphere?
It was very interesting this year. Obviously, there is so much discussion as to what the offseason of 2026 and to 2027 is going to look like. And so that's led to, I think, it would probably not be unfair to call it anxiety about this 2025-26 offseason and what it would mean for, player movement and for, teams that have not spent in a very long time, all of a sudden either spending money or acting as though there will be spending money, and what that means for the economics of the game going forward. So it was really interesting. And to be there, and see so many different faces from the baseball world and, be around all of that. It's fun. I mean, I had not been to a winter meetings in a very, very long time. It had been 15 years since I was last at the winter meetings. And so it was a really different event this time around, especially from the minor league baseball side. There's no trade show. There's no job fair, the stuff that you might have been used to if you were a minor league employee back in the day around the time when I was. But it was still very, very cool. And, there is an electricity to it, there's an energy to it that does not, it's very fitting. I think it's not an overblown thing to feel like, oh, there is a lot of stuff happening here. There are some very big decisions being made. There's a lot of money changing hands. There's just a cool little vibe to it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you got to go and experience that, especially this year's. Like this year's, I know you said there was some anxiety to it, but given how much was happening and how much, I think picking up off the World Series, right? Everybody's saying baseball is in a good place right now, and there is so much to talk about. I was talking about this plenty with folks this week in terms of how do you compare the MLB offseason with the NBA offseason, for example, or the NFL offseason. The NBA offseason, all the major deals happen, it feels like within minutes of the window opening, right? And part of that is having the salary cap. There's max contracts. You know exactly what you're going to get. There's not really much negotiation. It's just like, here's what we're going to give you. Add us to the profile, pick it, move on. Baseball, there's some nuance there. And I like how deals build. Everybody's chattering about it and talking about it. We're here in December. Like, people ask all the time, what do you do in the off season? And, part of me wants to say I look out the window and wait for spring. But the other part is like, no, there's still tons to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's going to keep rolling. Kyle Tucker remains unsigned. Tarek Skubal, is he going to get traded? Is he not going to get traded? We might not know until he shows up in Lakeland, to be honest with you. And even then, who knows going into the spring? Like, I like that this continues to roll out, and it'll give us plenty more to talk about beyond just Orlando. I did miss it. I wish I was there. But I like that the chatter emanates from one place and it spreads, coast to coast.
Well, Sam, one of the faces that will be in a new place into 2026 is a guy who was dealt actually prior to the winter meetings, but the guy that we're really familiar with on this podcast, and that is now former Seattle Mariners prospect and current now Washington Nationals prospect, Harry Ford, the longtime catching prospect in the Mariners organization, who obviously has been blocked at the big league level by Cal Raleigh. He now is in a spot with with a fresh pathway in front of him, headed toward the nation's capital. They're in a very interesting place in Washington right now. There are rumors that Mackenzie Gore and C.J. Abrams are, if not directly on the trading block, they're at least guys that the Nationals are listening on. So the Nats are in I guess, another rebuild, or maybe phase two of their post World Series / post Juan Soto era rebuild. This was an interesting move, but I think ultimately, great for Harry Ford that he's going to have a place to be able to now arrive at the major league level and see what he's like as a big league regular.
Yeah, this felt like something that was always coming this offseason. Not necessarily these two teams linking up, but Harry Ford. I even wrote this at one point for MLB Pipeline of some prospects who could be affected by the offseason, and Harry Ford just always seemed like a trade candidate because Cal Raleigh coming off a 60 homer year, coming off finishing MVP runner up. He's got a contract that's going to keep him there for a bit. You just don't see the playing time coming for a Harry Ford. So you use him as a trade chip while you can. And I know when the trade happened, there were reactions all over the spectrum. A lot of people were very surprised that Harry Ford, who right now we have ranked at number 42, we're going to update that this offseason. Feel pretty comfortable saying he's not going to be number 42 when we do our updates. He's probably not going to be in the top 50. But you trade a top 100 prospect at any rate for a left-handed reliever, like just a reliever who's not up to the quality of an Edwin Diaz. Like what's going on here? And I think for the Mariners, you look at last year and they were so close and they were just a few pieces short, right? Just a few outs short, just a few calls short of maybe making a World Series run. What can they do to get over the top? Well, Jose Ferrer, I feel like, is just about to take off. He's got some years of control left. He has closing experience. He actually got 11 saves last year for the Nats. Don't look at the 4.48 ERA. Look more at the quality of stuff. He's got some good velocity. He doesn't walk a ton of guys. I think, he's kind of in a place where he's going to pitch high leverage innings. And the Mariners have said that. The Nationals have said that. This is going to be a key piece for the Mariners moving forward. And, they trade a guy who's frankly was going to be a backup at best for them next year. So Harry Ford wasn't going to have huge value for the Mariners, at least in their depth. And if you compare him to, let's say, a Lazaro Montez or a Colt Emerson, some of the position player prospects ranked above him, Harry Ford doesn't have that true standout tool that those other guys do. He used to be a plus runner. He's not really that anymore. He's still pretty athletic for a catcher. I'll grant him that. He's coming off a year last year in which he hit 283, 460, 283, 408, 460, and 868 OPS for AAA Tacoma in 97 games. Career high 16 homers. Part of that is the PCL, right? Playing in some pretty hitter-friendly environments. I think the standout tool for him right now is his plate discipline. The guy does not chase at all. I think that comes from his experience behind the plate. The book is out. I don't want to say the book is out, but like people are still trying to figure out, can he be a catcher long-term? He has some experience in the outfield. The Mariners tried him out there, again, because of what his legs used to be. The Nationals have said they still believe he can get to be an average defender behind the plate when it comes to framing. He's improved his blocking. There's some interesting pieces there. But like you said, Tyler, he is maybe in pole position now to be the number one catcher for the Nats. They have Keibert Ruiz, who a few years ago, he was also acquired in a trade, right? Like he was somebody who was brought in by the previous regime in Washington to be the catcher of the future. Hasn't really worked out that way. Back-to-back years below a 1 WAR in Washington. His highest WAR a year was 1.5. It's not somebody who screams, he's our franchise cornerstone. And I don't know if Harry Ford necessarily has that ceiling either, but I think he has a much better chance as we sit here now of being at least an average catcher, somebody who's going to get a high OBP, somebody who's going to run into 12, 15 homers a year. And again, if he can bring that defense up to be just average, that's a pretty strong piece to have considering where the rest of the position players are right now for the Nats with James Wood and Dylan Cruz and Dalen Lyle. And if they keep C.J. Abrams around, that can be a pretty good little lineup. So we'll see what other moves they make, but like bring in Harry Ford right now. this feels like the smart move that the Nats need to do. This isn't trading Ferrer for like, a first round pick from last year or somebody who's going to have a longer development tail. You can plug Ford right in right now alongside Wood and Cruz and Lyle. And at least the rebuild doesn't have to be this long, huge project like it's been the last few years. You can get somebody who can help right away, or at least look like he can. I'm sure the competition is going to be wide open, but if I had to guess, I think Ford, as we stand right now, is probably your opening day catcher for Washington.
So, a big change in the future for Harry Ford as the once Mariners heir apparent, it seemed like, behind the plate, now member of the Washington Nationals organization, and certainly far from the only guy changing his locale here going into the 2026 season, because the Rule 5 draft was this week at the MLB winter meetings. That was on Wednesday afternoon. 13 players taken during the big league phase. 12 of the 13 were right-handed pitchers, which was kind of interesting, Sam, including the first overall pick in the Rule 5 draft, RJ Petit from the formerly Detroit Tigers organization, now with the Rockies. But give us some of the headliners in this 2025 Rule 5 draft.
Yeah, let's just run through the picks here real fast. You mentioned Petit going first to the Rockies, and I'll return to that one because he's somebody who I thought was a pretty sure bet to be taken. So him going to Colorado is not a huge shock. Number 2, the White Sox took right-hander Jetson Paez from the Red Sox. Number 3, the Nationals took Griff McGarry from the Phillies. Number 4, the Twins took Daniel Susac from the A's, but he was later traded to the Giants, so he'll now have to stick in the San Francisco system. The Pirates took right-hander Carter Baumler. I should say Daniel Susac is the catcher. He was the only position player taken this year. Number 5, Carter Baumler from Baltimore, later traded to Texas, so he'll now have to stick with the Rangers. The A's took Ryan Watson from San Francisco. He was later traded to Boston. The Cardinals took Matt Pushard, a right-handed pitcher from Miami. Number 8, the Astros took a right-handed pitcher, Roderick Munoz from the Cincinnati Reds. Number 9, the Guardians took right-handed pitcher Peyton Pallette from the White Sox. Number 10, the Blue Jays took right-handed pitcher Spencer Miles from the Giants. 11, the Yankees. The Yankees making their first Rule 5 pick since 2011 took.
I was going to say, not a common thing for you to say, number 11, the Yankees. That just doesn't happen in that organization.
No, it doesn't. Normally they have way too loaded of a 40-man roster to take somebody in the Rule 5 draft. And then they have too loaded of a 26-man roster, right, to keep somebody on there for the full year. Discuss that in a second. Right-handed pitcher Cade Winquist from the St. Louis Cardinals. Number 12, the Phillies took right-hander Zach McCambley from Miami. And number 13, the White Sox made their second pick, taking right-handed pitcher Alexander Alberto from Tampa Bay. So, as you mentioned there, Tyler, a whole lot of right-handed pitchers, 12 out of the 13 picks. Only one position player, that's Daniel Susac, who now goes to the Giants. Big shock, right? Buster Posey took a catcher in the Rule 5 draft. It's almost like he may know something about the position.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, big shock. But in terms of who stands out here, we'll start with Petit. Somebody who, what's going to jump out first, right, is the fact that he is 6'8", 300 pounds. He is as big as the Rockies himself on the mound. He's got a really, really good slider, and that's something the Rockies said. Jonathan Mayo wrote up the Rule 5 draft for us on MLB Pipeline. He got some quotes from the Rockies. They said the slider, which drops off the table, it's not like this big sweeper. It's more of a vertical breaker. They believe can work really well in Coors Field. You look at, for me, if the Rockies are taking a pitcher, what is his ground ball rate, right? Well, at AAA Toledo last year, 51%. That's a big reason why they took him. He was somebody who had really strong numbers at both AA and AAA in 2025. So I think you can plug him in pretty easily. Didn't struggle with the MLB ball in terms of control, walking 3.9 per 9 innings. So is he going to have closer upside? No, I'm not going to say that. But in terms of, can you get a bullpen piece that, you would love to have cheap bullpen pieces that can be effective? He can do that. He can do that for the Rockies. So with stuff, like I said, that could potentially play in the thin air, I think is pretty big. The White Sox taking 2 players, not a shock either. They didn't technically do that last year, but they did have 2 Rule 5 guys. Shane Smith, who ended up playing in the All-Star, was an All-Star for them in 2025. They got him from the Brewers. And then Mike Vassell, who was technically taken by the Rays, but then put on waivers in spring training. They picked him up as well. Both of those guys stuck They kind of went the other way. Both of those guys had double A and triple A experience, or at least upper level experience, and looked more like major league ready pieces. Paez and Alberto have no upper level experience. And they're two very different pitchers. Paez, coming from the Red Sox, dealt with a right calf injury last year. His slider and his changeup are his two best pitches. But we have him at 70 control. So he's going to hit his spots. And I think that's what they're buying here is like, you can see the makings of a starting pitcher for the White Sox. And obviously, they're still in rebuild mode. One thing we haven't said yet, right, is that they won the draft lottery this week. So Rock Chalowski might want to start dreaming of what life is like on the south side of Chicago.
Or Grady Emerson or George Lombard.
Emerson. There's still a spring to play. There's
Still a
still
spring to
lots
play.
can happen. Yeah. But Rock Chalowski, as close to a sure thing as you're going to have this far out, I will say. Now, it might still be 50-50 on if he gets taken first overall. But anyway, White Sox still very much in rebuild mode. So you get Paez. You hope he maybe becomes a starter for you, maybe more in 2027 than 2026. And then Alberto, another huge, huge arm there that they can now add to their bullpen straight away. He's also 6'8". Now he's much thinner than Petit. He's 6'8", 203 pounds. Like there's, at least the way they are listed, 100-pound difference between these two right-handed pitchers. But Alberto's got a really, really good fastball, 96 to 98, can touch 101, and it's got cut to it. But by that, I mean, normally you expect fastballs to drift arm side some. His doesn't do that as much. So you expect it to come up and in, and it's not doing that. Guys swing and miss on that a lot. So they're chasing a pitch shape here. And then he's got an actual mid-80s slider that has some sweep to it. So he's got a pitch that is going glove side. Those two pitches are enough that you can hopefully just make them work. Like, hey, the metrics on those are really good. Yes, you don't have experience going up against MLB bats yet, but you're still going to have some stuff that they haven't seen. So it's an interesting tactic for the White Sox. They're taking some really inexperienced pitchers. Some other names I really like or find interesting. Griff McGarry going to the Nationals. Again, the Nationals being in a rebuild, you might as well take a chance. They take somebody away from a division rival in the Phillies. Griff McGarry moved to the bullpen in 2024 and had some really, really rough control numbers. I mean, in 2024, he had 31 and 2/3 innings. He walked 36 in that time. Now, they moved him back to the rotation this year, went from the AAA bullpen to the AA rotation. Numbers were a little bit better. 3.44 ERA, 49 walks, and 83 and 2/3 innings. Struck out 124 batters. He's got both a really, really good long sweeper and a shorter slider that still has about like 10, 11 inches of sweep to it. And his fastball can be really, really good with a vertical approach angle that makes it really tough on batters. Again, you're chasing stuff here and hoping that you can continue to build on the control gains that he showed in 2025. The Nats seem open, at least right now. They're not going public on whether they see him as a reliever or a starter. And maybe given what we've seen in 2025, it's best to just keep him in a starting role. And if you can get a cheap number 5 starter who's got the stuff, like that's what the Rule 5 draft is about. So that one's a little fascinating to me. And then another one that I'll just throw out real quick that I have no idea if this guy's going to stick. I'll be honest with you. But the Blue Jays clearly see something in Spencer Miles. And Spencer Miles only has 14 and 2/3 innings of professional experience, period. He pitched in the Arizona Fall League this year, looked really, really good, had some velo there, but has dealt with Tommy John surgery. He's dealt with back issues. Like he was drafted in 2022 out of Missouri in the 4th round and still hasn't pitched more than 20 innings in a minor league setting. Again, you're chasing stuff here. Yeah, the Blue Jays actually have somebody else who they have to keep as a Rule 5 pick, and Angel Pistardo, who they took from the Red Sox last year, and he rehabbed from Tommy John surgery all year this year. So now they're doing that with a second one. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, the Blue Jays have been very active. We talked about this last week on the free agent front, bringing in Dylan Cease, bringing in Cody Ponce, adding another arm here. Maybe they're just trying to take a look at Spencer Miles. Maybe they can unlock something there with him. But if the Blue Jays are taking a guy and they have limited 40-man space, they clearly see something. And I think it's the amount of different pitches, the velo that is there, and the hope that because he hasn't thrown a lot, he's still very moldable. I think that's interesting for Spencer Miles. So keep an eye on that one there in Dunedin come this spring.
Sam, as far as the makeup of different systems, the Rule 5 draft is not generally going to, oh man, look at this team. They've moved from a middle tier to an upper tier team because of what they did in the Rule 5 draft. But for systems and top 30s and all of that, is there anything that really stands out as a headliner or maybe a few of, systems that improved or guys who seemed like they can climb a lot faster in their new systems versus their old?
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? Is that we add these guys as prospects to their new systems. And if the Rule 5 draft works as it should, they'll graduate after 45 days because they will have been in the majors. They cannot be sent down and then be like, oh, we see really good gains. Like their prospect stock is climbing. If their stock is climbing, then they're going to graduate very quickly. But the White Sox are interesting for what I mentioned before. Like, as much as they are a rebuilding system right now, Paez moves to number 15 in their top 30. Alberto goes to number 21. And Jim Callis does our White Sox top 30. And he and I were talking about this. Like, where do you put these guys? Paez was definitely going to get ranked. Alberto, do you rank him because he's a straight reliever who hasn't seen the upper minors yet? And there's some interesting pieces up top for the White Sox for sure. But it crumbles pretty quick, the depth. Like, they don't have a great 15 to 30 group. And they actually lost a prospect in this draft as well, in Peyton Pallette going to the Cleveland Guardians. So, the White Sox top 30, it's going to get stronger in that draft for sure. But it's softer than it should be for a rebuild. So I think that's why they made multiple picks here, is because, again, these guys are going to graduate before it really affects our farm system rankings or their overall outlook. But it's an opportunity to buy two arms for very cheap, get them on minimum contracts for a few years if everything goes straight. And, if Jedickson Paez is your number 4 starter in 2027, even after taking some lumps in 2026, that's a pretty good opportunity for them. That being said, I don't normally love this profile of taking somebody who's just like, oh, well, he hasn't seen AA or AAA yet, but we like him as a future starter. That's really tough to carry those guys on a 26-man roster for a full year. Like, it's really, really difficult, even if you are a not good team, to justify somebody who's throwing it all around the shop or getting hit around. Like, even if you believe in the guy long term, it's going to be really difficult to do that from March to October. So, keep an eye on that space. We've seen varying degrees of Rule 5 success over the years. For every Garrett Whitlock and for every Brad Keller and Shane Smith now, like, there are tons of examples of guys who get sent home early March or get sent back to their original clubs. But, again, it's very interesting that teams are circling right-handed pitching here, because I think that's the demographic. Guys you can plug in right away and help the bullpen and not have to ask to be your 4th outfielder, for example, or your backup first baseman. That's an even taller task to ask to stick.
So that is the 30,000-foot view. Actually, not even. That was a little bit closer. That was like a 10,000-foot view. But you can read more about the Rule 5 draft at MLB.com/pipeline. And coming up, we will get a chance to visit the baseball careers of some legends of yore as we return with Name That Dude. Ben Hill rejoins us to wrap up this week's episode of the Show Before the Show next.
Here's a quick podcast for all you true crime fans. The Case of the Missing Reeses. It was me at the store with my mouth. Motive? They're Reese's. What was I going to do? Stop myself? Tune in next time to see if I do it again. Spoiler, I will. Wow, that had everything. Reese's, suspense, Reese's.
All right, we are back to close out this week's edition of the Show Before the Show, but not before we play the latest game of Name That Dude, in which one of us gives the life and times of a minor leaguer from the past, and the other two have to guess who that player is. I am the dude knower this week. Tyler and Ben, you are the dude guessers. So everybody ready at home, you can feel free to shout into your podcast listening device what you believe the answer to be. Do not email us the answer. We'll already have known it by then. But, if you want to claim that you got it before these two guys did, feel free to claim that. All right. The dude this week was drafted by the Detroit Tigers in the 5th round of the 1975 June amateur draft out of Martinsville High School in Martinsville, Virginia. That was in 1975. In 1975, he went to play 42 games for Bristol in the Appalachian League, the Bristol Tigers, in his age 18 season. His age 19 season was in single A with the Lakeland Tigers, yet added flying to their name. So 1976, he was in the Florida State League, played 124 games with Lakeland that year. 1977 moves up to Double A with the Montgomery Rebels at the time of the Southern League. So Montgomery back in the news here in our final segment. Also in 1977, he debuted with the Tigers. And then 1978, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. He played for the Tigers, and then he retired after his age 38 season. This is pretty easy, probably, but there's a point to all of this, I promise. And Ben is walking over to look at my screen, but let's have him guess anyway.
Oh, I didn't actually look at it, but this is a pretty easy one. I think, Tyler, do you know?
I'm not positive.
I'm going to go with Sweet Lou Whitaker.
Sweet Lou Whitaker is the guy.
I figured that was
dude.
probably, yeah. Man, I did
Indeed,
not
this week.
till 95. I would not have, if you had me pinpoint Lou Whitaker as the years of his career, I would have figured that his career ended a few years before that.
Lou Whitaker in 1994, which shortened season, played 92
Right.
games, was still batting 301 in his age 37 season.
That's amazing.
And if you are wondering why I am bringing up Lou Whitaker this week, we kind of touched on it in the opening segment. Jeff Kent,
Because he got robbed.
he got robbed before this week. Lou Whitaker,
He's been
was
robbed
my
for
first
quite some
Blue
time.
Sky post. When I created my Blue Sky, I was like, this is the first thing I want out in the world, is that Lou Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame.
Like Lou Sky.
Yes, that's what I should have been saying. Lou Whitaker won a Rookie of the Year award. He was a 5-time All-Star. He won the World Series in 1984 with the Tigers. He was a 3-time Gold Glover, 4-time Silver Slugger. Him and Alan Trammell were one of the best double play pairings of all time. He finished his career with 75.1 BWAR, 2,369 hits, 244 homers, a 117 OPS plus. If you look at him on the Jaws, which is something that Jay Jaffe has come up with to kind of compare players at certain positions, he's 13th all time at second base, which is above where Jeff Kent is. Jeff Kent got to be on the ballot, and this isn't. I'm not turning this into an anti-Jeff Kent.
Considerably above where Jeff Kent is, correct? On the
Jeff
Jaws
Kent
rating?
is 22nd. His Jaws, which is a melding of both your career WAR and also what your peak WAR was over the 7 best years of your career consecutively. So Jeff Kent was 22nd in Jaws at 45.6. Lou Whitaker is 13th now at 56.5.
Yeah.
Now, Chase Utley is in 12th, and that's a conversation we can continue to have, and I'm sure we will continue to have. This is not about anybody else other than Lou Whitaker. Lou Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame. I hope he gets in there. I hope he gets an opportunity to be acknowledged while he can enjoy it, while he, because we've seen this happen too often. Fernando Valenzuela was on the committee vote this time, didn't get in either, got fewer than 5 votes, so he's not even going to be on in 2028 when the next his era committee comes up. But Fernando Valenzuela, I think, is a Hall of Famer. Unfortunately passed away before he got to see himself potentially go into Cooperstown. I don't want that for Lou Whitaker. I want Lou Whitaker in the Hall of Fame. And now I'm going to get off my soapbox because preaching to the fans isn't how this is going to get done. It's going to get done in a committee. But hopefully there's still a groundswell for Lou and he can get his day at some point here by the time the next committee comes up in 2028.
I think that is a phenomenal choice and a good way to wrap up this week's episode of the show before the show. You can get in touch with us, as always, podcast@milb.com. And for Sam Dykstra and Benjamin Hill, my name is Tyler Maughan. We'll catch you next week.